Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today troubleshoot session. Today is our third troubleshoot session. So my name is Deborah Martins Braga. I graduated. Just a brief introduction. So I graduated as a pharmacist. I have a master in pharmaceutical industry. I work throughout multiple entities as a pharmacist in the pharmaceutical industry, in a clinical research organization, and later on I joined EMA. This took place in 2016, where I joined the SPORE team. I supported SMS, RMS, and I'm currently the OMS business lead and the subject matter expert. And I'm actively involved in any system development, system integration, in training, and dissemination of knowledge on multiple system functionalities and business rules. So without further ado, we'll start our today's session, today's troubleshoot session. So just an agenda on what we're going through, the points that we're going to go through today. So we're going to go through a couple of questions that we've received through Slido. I've added to the previous troubleshoot sessions, I've added another topic, which I call the housekeeping rules, to give you an overview of what this troubleshoot sessions entail and what it has been happening, as well to give you an update on our OMS customer support, that we recently changed platform, so that you know exactly how to reach us, how to log in any question or request that you may have. So starting with the questions raised for today's session. So in a nutshell, we've received two questions related with data management. One of them with a very specific case, and with this is actually something that we somehow already went through during our previous troubleshoot sessions. But with this example, I think we can better, it's always good to have examples. So I highly advise you to submit examples through using Slido, because with examples, we can have a more practical and a better understanding on how the rules that you by now are already aware, how the OMS rules apply in those specific cases. And one of the cases, one of the questions that we've received is the user actually reported that the organization was registered twice in OMS, and following a bit of investigation on the system, I brought this example here to show you and to give you an example, because it's important for us to ensure that we do not have any duplicates, but there is a capability that the OMS system has that it may lead to the confusion. It may lead to an understanding that OMS has a duplicate in the system, and in fact, it's not a real duplicate. And I'll start to give you a couple of notes on the OMS data system. This is indeed is a master data management tool, and some of the basic principles, some of the master data management principles that we have at the back end, one of them being that we never delete any information from the system. So in case we create a record that it was wrongly validated, that it shouldn't be added to the OMS dictionary, we are not going to delete this information. What we do is we deactivate the record. And the same thing happens in case an organization ceases to exist, or in case a location is no longer in use by a certain organization. What we do is we deactivate the record, just so that we can follow the principle that nothing is ever deleted. And we do this to assure a traceability in case the user ever saw that a record or ever used a certain record in a certain regulatory procedure, so that we can somehow trace it back and understand what was the reason behind and what was why was this record deactivated. Another of the principles for why we have this system as it is, and I already mentioned, which is to retain any historical data, but in this case, in the sense of any previously recorded names and even any other system identifiers. The same principle applies here. We are not going to delete anything. The idea is to have OMS as a master data, as a dictionary of what happened since we went live, all this type of information. Of course, if there is an update, if there is an old name that OMS never had as a record, of course, this type of history will not be able to trace it back. But if this history ever existed in OMS, everything will be mapped to the same final record, to the same active or inactive record. And last but not least, which is actually applicable to the record, to both IDs that we have here today, which were the questions that we received, which is the merge capability that OMS have. What does this merge allow? Once again, this merge allows us to keep any history of the data and not deleting any information. This merge capability occurs in OMS every time there is a business merge. Imagine that there is an acquisition of company A to company B, and what we do is we of course will need to assess how the data is displayed in the National Business Registry. But if we find evidence about this acquisition, and that they are now traced to the same legal entity, this is what we call it business merge. Another action that could lead to a merge is the deduplication. And this deduplication, I'm not taking back to the example, to the question that the user placed. This is exactly what happened. So we identify that we identify an issue in our database. We identified that we had 2 active records in our system. And in order not to lose any history, or in order not to have any remap needed to be done, we use this merge capability. This merge capability, what in reality, what does is we are not deleting any ID from the system. This is exactly how the system works. So in this case, what I did is I query the OMS portal with one of the IDs, and the outcome of my search was the mastered record, what we also call it the golden record. So, and how can you identify this? there is you can identify this merge by query the system and do an assessment indeed that the system is giving you another ID. They are both referenced to the same organization. If you'd like to have a better understanding of the record, understand if it's just these two IDs or if there are more IDs at the back end, you can always export, click in this functionality where you export the results, and here you will have the history. This is like taking back exactly to the principle of the master data management system. You will have all the IDs. In this case, we only have two IDs because once there was a duplicate in the OMS dictionary. And for the reason, they are still, both IDs are still active, even though they all pointed out to the same master data management, master data, the golden record, the master record that followed the merge that we took place. So answering this question, the answer to this question is no. The organization is not registered twice in the system. And this is visible because if we query using this organization ID or the other organization ID, you will always retrieve the same record, which is the golden record. You can use either one of the IDs because they are all mapped. They are all referenced to the same OMS record. Moving on to the next question. So this one, it was actually part of the previous question, but I think it's important to tackle it as a different, because the type of information we provide here is different, which was the user identified that their own organization was registered in our dictionary, even though they never did such registration. And here, I'd like to give you an overview on a high-level overview on how OMS dictionary is built on the day-to-day. This happened, as I said, on the day-to-day basis. OMS is not a static dictionary. So we have different sources, daily data sources of integration. So one of them being our internal financial database. This is one of the sources that we constantly monitor in order to add any possible, any new legal entities to our dictionary. Another internal data source that we use is the SME database. We also a daily integration. We do another of the data sources is through data integration or mapping. In case there is any ongoing project, this is another source of information that we use to review what we have in our dictionary and what is new in the National Business Registry that can help us complete and improve the data of our dictionary. And last but not least, through the change request capability that can happen via CTIS portal or via OMS portal. And here is the answer to the question and the critical information, which is that anyone can submit, anyone can create a change request as long to add or to update any information as long as the required supporting documentation is submitted. We'll go into more details about this supporting documentation on the next slide. But in a nutshell, just to tell you that change requests, even though this is the only mechanism that the external user uses to add or to update any information in the OMS dictionary. But just to highlight that this is, even though this is the only gateway with the user, this is not the only data source that OMS uses. So we do other internal activities. Other example of this data integration that we do, and we actually recently conclude a major data review, which was the currency. So what we did in this activity is we went through a couple of records, OMS records, that have not been updated for more than 2 years, and we review all these records. This resulted in a significant number of deactivation because we, after the assessment with the information that we have in the National Business Registry, we saw that those records that we had active in the OMS, they were actually no longer active in the National Business Registry with the local authorities. And this is another example of the data integration that we do. Just to tell you that if you find that a certain record that you need is already available in the system, what we ask you is to help us assure that the data is correctly registered. But of course, even if you were not the one registered, it just means that the organization was created and was highlighted as important part, as an important record to be added to our dictionary, because it was needed for any of the OMS consuming systems. Now, just as a revision point, because it's true that we've already seen this in one of the previous troubleshoots, but we've seen, I've received the information from our clinical trial colleagues that this is a question that often arises. And here, just to highlight that, of course, for us to create an organization, we always need to have information from the National Business Registry. So the first location that we create with the registration of the organization, of course, this is something that we need to validate against the National Business Registry, but to highlight that any other physical addresses that may be needed to be captured under a certain organization, they can also be added, regardless if they are available in the National Business Registry or not, because we acknowledge that not all the physical locations that the companies need to use in a regulatory procedure are available in this business registry. We acknowledge this. We know that through, not only for CTIS, but also, for example, for inspection purpose, we know that this is not the case. That's why we do not restrict this. We can never do this, because otherwise the regulatory procedure will not be able to move forward. So this is possible. And what may be tricky here is, of course, you will not have the supporting documentation from the National Business Registry, which is fine. Not to forget that we still need some written proof that you want to create the physical location B under the organization A. If, and this, the guidance on the type of supporting documentation that can be submitted per type of change request, there is a document, there is a guidance very detailed with this information. So if you are, we even have not only information for according to the supporting documentation per type of change request, we also added the granular information and type of supporting documentation to be submitted if you are based, or if the record is based in an EEA country or in a non-EEA country, because the rules applicable are different, because the validation sources that we use are also different. That's why before you want to submit or to add or to update any information in the OMS dictionary, please consult this guidance, because you will have information there on the type of supporting documentation that you need to either add or update any record that we have there. And in this case, the message that I received from my CTIS colleagues is that the concerns were in adding new locations to an organization. So here, to add, if you have an organization that is already available in the OMS portal and you wish to add a new location to that record, and of course that location is not available in the National Business Registry, then a simple headed letter, it will be sufficient. Signed, this headed letter, you need to have the organization name, the location details, and it needs to be signed and dated. And if you attach this to your change request, then we will be happily approve and create the location under the organization that you required. All these requirements that I just mentioned, all the details that you need to add on your supporting documentation, they are all available in the guidance on the type of change, on the type of supporting documentation to be used on the change request. This guidance is available in our OMS portal, and the name of the guidance is change request. It's very, very straightforward. You have a summary after the document in case you're navigating in our OMS portal and you are uncertain, you are not sure where to find, you have a summary of what type of information each document has. And in this case, where the guidance, where you can find further information on the supporting documentation is available in our OMS portal under the change request document. Now that we've gone through the questions that have been submitted, just some recent updates that I would like to pass the message. Both one of them at our new OMS customer service platform, and another one on just a couple of notes on the whole structure of our troubleshoot sessions. And because we've seen the feedback that you've provided in the previous troubleshoots, also to give you an understanding, because one of the comments that we've seen is that you've shared with us that your question has not been addressed, and now we'll give you the reason for why has your question, you placed it using Slido, and why has not been addressed. But first, before we go there, I'll just like to leave you here this recent change that it happened. Probably a couple of you already noticed. So the OMS customer support has moved from the old service desk platform, and now we are reachable through a new platform which is called ServiceNow. I'll just like to leave you a couple of notes, because I know that we still have a couple of CTIS questions to be addressed in ServiceNow. So this change, it took place on the 12th of September. Just to tell you that any tickets that any OMS tickets that you still have open with service desk, they will not be closed. We will address them in service desk. Any tickets that were raised after September 12th, they were already logged using ServiceNow, and we will address them using the new platform. This just to tell you that old requests will not be deleted, will not be forgotten. We will address in the same platform new new requests, new calls that you may created. They should be logged through ServiceNow, and we will use the same platform to clarify and to try to support you. I'm going to leave you here the link so that you can, in case once you need it, you'll have all the information there. And now just a couple of notes on, because in this new platform, we have all types of requests and questions, all types of calls that you can log. So I will leave you here the content. So because we have three major types of calls that you can log in this new service. One of them is the request for information. The other one is issue, and the other one is request. I will leave you here a couple of examples of what entails a question or request for information. And I'll leave you here the path for future reference on exactly how to log in each type of this request. So one example of a request for information that you can log with the OMS team, in case you would like to have further clarification on our data quality standards, or even our process, trying to understand the status of a change request. All this should be logged as a request for information. If we look into issues itself, in case you've identified a data quality issue, in case you identify a potential duplicate in the dictionary, of course, this is something that we'll need to assess. But if you try to follow the same approach that I've already introduced to you, which is search using the OMS portal and trying to understand if both IDs are pointing out to the same master record. If not, if you identify that they are both existing as separate records, then this is one example that you can log as a data quality incident, and we'll be happy to do the assessment. And in case it's a duplicate, we will proceed with the merge process so that we won't lose any information. And last but not least, because our OMS portal still needs a couple of adjustments, there are some changes that the user is not able to submit using the change request capability. One of them, for example, being the deletion of any existing contacting details, the deletion of an alternative name that is no longer in use, or for example, if you'd wish to add or to update an existing national business registry that we are now populating this information in OMS portal. So all these are capabilities that we have in our backlog to develop our OMS portal. But of course, until we have this done, we will continue using the request functionality through this ServiceNow platform. And now moving on into our troubleshoot sessions. So just to give answering one of the comments that we received in the survey, and I thank you for that. And that's why we kindly ask you for this feedback, because it helps us understanding what are we missing, and it led indeed to this slide where exactly we want to show you uh, how is this troubleshoot session organized, and exactly um, why some of you feel that some of your questions have not been addressed in these sessions. And the answer to your question is based on this small bubble that we have here. Because these OMS troubleshoot sessions, just like the name points, and me being OMS part of the OMS team, I can only help you. I can only address OMS related questions. And what we've seen is that most of the questions that have been logged through Slido, they are not actually OMS questions, but they are more CTIS questions. So there may be a thin line, and how can you quickly identify if it's an OMS or if it's a CTIS question? It's by simply ask yourself, is it a data issue? If it's a data issue, something that we publish that is not correct, so this Slido or the ServiceNow, they are both the right platforms to address, so that you can reach the OMS team so that we can address it and provide the right information. If your question is more in the sense that on how to use the OMS data, then this is no longer OMS scope, because OMS is responsible for publishing and assuring the data quality of the records. How the data is used, then this is up to the business rules that are established by each business unit. And in this case, CTIS, most of the questions that we've seen, they need to be addressed in different channels. Some of them I leave you here, because they are more on the CTIS process and not data related questions. And just to leave you here a reminder that we're going to have our last troubleshoot session scheduled in 1 month. So in case you have any OMS data related questions, please, and even examples, because we've seen that now that we've gone through all the rules, please ask any examples, because probably we can clarify now that we've seen the theory that we use in OMS. I'm happy to go through the same theory, but applying to a certain specific case that you have identified. This can be submitted through Slido, or in case it's an urgent request and you need to see your answer addressed as soon as possible, please use our customer platform to place your question. And with this, we conclude today's troubleshoot. And again, we invite you to provide feedback on what some comments. Of course, depending if you're sponsor or member state, we kindly ask you to use the right QR code. If we're happy to hear from you where we can improve and how can we better use this platform to better address any of your OMS related questions. We're happy to hear and to improve, use those comments to improve our sessions. And with this, of course, as I mentioned, we have our next troubleshoot session in a month. Not to forget to submit your questions until 17th of November, and use the same. I'll leave you here the link to the session and to the web page where you'll have all these sorts of information and how can you log in your questions. In any case, if you have any urgent matter, please let us know through ServiceNow, and we're happy to assist with any OMS related questions. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a lovely end of the day. Thank you.